Rip Van Winkle went up in the mounting. The sign had a picture of King George III of England. When he came down 20 years later, the sign had a picture of George Washington, the first president of the United States. And Rip Van Winkle looked up at the picture of George Washington, but in looking at the picture, he was amazed. He was completely lost. He knew not who he was. And this reveals to us that the most striking thing about the story of Rip Van Winkle is not merely that Rip slept 20 years, but that he slept through a revolution. While he was peacefully snoring up in the mountain, a revolution was taking place that at points would change the course of history. And Rip knew nothing about it. He was asleep. Yes, he slept through a revolution. One of the great liabilities of life is that all too many people find themselves living amid a great period of social change, and yet they fail to develop the new attitudes, the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. No individual can live alone. No nation can live alone. And anyone who feels that he can live alone is sleeping through a revolution. The world in which we live is geographically one. The challenge that we face today is to make it one in terms of brotherhood. And yet, we have not had the ethical commitment to make of it a brotherhood. But somehow and in some way we've got to do this. We must all learn to live together as brothers, or we will all perish together as fools. We are tied together in the single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be.
The time is always right to do what is right. These words, spoken by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., resonate with the heavy weight of history, a history stained with the horrors of slavery and colonialism. For centuries, Black Africans were subjected to unimaginable cruelty, torn from their homelands, stripped of their humanity, and treated as mere commodities. The wounds of this brutal past run deep, demanding acknowledgment and redress. This is the unfinished business of justice, reparations. The transatlantic slave trade was a period of immense suffering. Millions of Africans were forcibly removed from their homes. They endured horrific conditions aboard slave ships. Those who survived faced a life of forced labor, brutality, and degradation. Families were torn apart, cultures decimated, and spirits crushed under the weight of oppression. It is a debt that has yet to be paid. This was not just a crime against a people. It was a crime against humanity itself. The legacy of slavery and colonialism continues to cast a long shadow over the world today. The demand for reparations is not about dwelling on the past. It is about demanding justice for the present and building a better future for generations to come. The transatlantic slave trade was a meticulously organized system of human trafficking. It was a lucrative enterprise that enriched European nations while leaving Africa devastated. Millions of Africans were stolen, their lives treated as mere commodities to be bought, sold, and exploited. Colonialism, the other face of this brutal oppression, further ravaged the continent. European powers carved up Africa, exploiting its vast resources and subjugating its people. Land was stolen, economies were crippled, and traditional systems of governance were destroyed. The numbers are staggering. It is estimated that over 12 million Africans were shipped across the Atlantic during the transatlantic slave trade. Countless more died during capture and transport. The human cost of these atrocities is immeasurable. The theft of resources and the systematic underdevelopment of Africa continue to have a profound impact on the continent today. The end of slavery and colonialism did not bring an end to the suffering. The deep scars of these injustices continue to plague Black communities. Systemic racism, deeply ingrained in the fabric of society, perpetuates inequality and denies opportunities. Generations after slavery, Black Americans still face a brutal reality. They are disproportionately incarcerated, denied access to quality education, and shut out of economic opportunities. The wealth gap between Black and white Americans is a stark reminder of the enduring legacy of systemic racism. The numbers tell a clear story of systemic disadvantage. Black Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of white Americans. They are more likely to live in poverty, experience homelessness, and lack access to health care. The median wealth of Black families is a fraction of that of white families. This is not a coincidence. It is the direct result of centuries of oppression and discrimination. From Jim Crow laws to redlining, from mass incarceration to the school-to-prison pipeline, Black Americans have been systematically denied equal opportunities. This is not simply a matter of historical injustice. It is a present-day crisis that demands immediate attention. The fight for equality is far from over. It is a fight for justice, for dignity, and for the right to thrive. Section 5. Reparations. Righting the wrongs. The demand for reparations is not new. It is a call for justice that has been echoing for generations. From the civil rights movement to the Black Lives Matter movement, activists and leaders have consistently demanded recognition and redress for the harms inflicted upon Black communities. Reparations are not simply about financial compensation, although that is a crucial component. They are about acknowledging the historical wrongdoings, investing in the future of Black communities, and creating a more just and equitable society. Across the globe, movements for reparations are gaining momentum. From the Caribbean to Europe, nations are grappling with their colonial pasts and the need to address the enduring legacies of slavery and colonialism. The time for action is now. Section 6. Investing in Black futures. Reparations are an investment in the future. By investing in Black communities, we can begin to dismantle the structures of systemic racism and create a more just and equitable society for all. This means providing access to quality education, affordable housing, health care, and economic opportunities. Imagine a world where Black children have access to the same opportunities as their white counterparts, where Black families can build generational wealth and pass down a legacy of prosperity, where Black communities are safe, vibrant, and empowered. This is the promise of reparations. It is a vision of a future where the sins of the past are acknowledged, the wounds of the present are healed, and the generations to come can finally live in a world free from the scourge of racism and inequality. Section 7. Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation. Reparations are not just about money, they are about justice. They are about acknowledging the truth of the past, taking responsibility for the harms inflicted, and committing to creating a better future. The process of reconciliation begins with truth. We must confront the uncomfortable truths of our history, no matter how painful they may be. Only then can we begin to heal the wounds of the past and move forward together. Justice requires accountability. Those who have benefited from the exploitation of Black people must be held accountable for their role in perpetuating these injustices. This includes governments, corporations, and individuals. Section 8. A call for action, time to pay the debt. The time for talk is over. The time for action is now. We need a comprehensive plan for reparations that includes financial compensation, investment in Black communities, and a commitment to dismantling systemic racism in all its forms. This is not a radical demand. It is a moral imperative. It is time for this nation to finally live up to its ideals of justice and equality for all. We must act now to right the wrongs of the past and create a better future for all Americans. Section 9. A future forged in justice. The fight for reparations is a fight for the soul of our nation. It is a fight for justice, for equality, and for the recognition of the inherent dignity and worth of all people. It is a fight that we cannot afford to lose. Let us imagine a future where the legacy of slavery and colonialism no longer casts a shadow over our world. A future where Black communities are thriving, where justice flows like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. This is the future we must fight for. This is the future we deserve.